13 seconds of silence. They say silence is peaceful, calming, the kind of quiet you find in a forest after snowfall, or in an empty chapel when the last candle flickers out. But I've learned there's another kind of silence thick, wrong, the kind that presses against your ears like deep water. I first noticed it around 6 months ago, though back then I didn't know what I was feeling. You know how your body sometimes reacts before your brain understands why? A prickle on the back of your neck when someone's watching, a jolt in your gut when something isn't right. That's how it started. The first night, I was lying in bed reading, and the hum of my ceiling fan just stopped. I didn't notice right away, not consciously. It was more like a sudden awareness that something was missing. I looked up, saw the blades still spinning, but heard nothing. Then it hit me, the whole room was dead quiet. Not just quiet-silent. No hum, no creaks from the building, not even my own breathing. I held my breath and listened harder, but there was nothing to hear. And then, just before the silence passed, I heard a whisper. Faint, indistinct, a brushing sound against my inner ear, like words spoken through a mouthful of sand. Don't let it find your name. I sat up so fast, I knocked my book off the bed. It was gone. The whisper, the silence, all of it gone in an instant. The fan resumed its soft whirring. A dog barked faintly outside. The building creaked as if stretching after a long breath. I remember staring at the clock on my nightstand. 2:14 a.m. I tried to shake it off. I told myself I must have dozed off for a second. It was probably a dream. Sleep paralysis, maybe. Stress. I'd been working long hours, drinking too much coffee, skipping meals. My brain was frayed. That had to be it. But then it happened again. And again. Every night, without fail, the world went completely silent at exactly 2:13 a.m. for 13 seconds. Not quiet, not less noisy. I mean total silence, dead silence, the kind that feels wrong, like the world has stopped functioning. And always, always, the whisper came at the end of it. At first, it was the same message every time. Don't let it find your name. But then, after maybe 2 weeks, it changed. I remember the first time clearly. I was sitting on the couch with a cup of herbal tea, determined to stay awake and catch the moment consciously this time. The clock ticked forward to 11, 2, 12, 2, 13, and as I stared, the second hand froze. That was new. It hadn't happened before. It ticked forward normally on previous nights, even during the silence, but now it just stopped, like time had joined in the silence. I leaned forward, my breath caught, and then I heard the whisper. Don't speak while it's listening. Different. Not wildly so, but enough to make me go cold all over. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, just as suddenly, the second hand ticked again. The noises returned, traffic far away, the gentle hum of my refrigerator, a distant siren. The cup in my hands was trembling. That's when I realized this wasn't just a trick of my mind. It wasn't a dream or some weird auditory hallucination. Something was happening, something that didn't belong in the natural order of things. I started recording the events. At first, I used my phone. I'd prop it up next to my bed or set it on the kitchen counter with the recording app open. Every morning, I'd review the audio. Every time, it was the same. 13 seconds of pure, flat silence. No whisper, no interference, just a dead, featureless block of soundless time. Eventually, I borrowed some better gear from the audio lab on campus directional mics, analog recorders, the kind of equipment meant to capture sub-audible frequencies. Same results. No whisper. No anything. But I heard it. I always heard it. And it always changed. Not every night, but often enough that I started writing them down. I kept a notebook on my nightstand, and every morning I'd jot down what the whisper had said. Here's a few of them. It already knows your window. Stay out of reflections. Cover your mouth when you sleep. There's something standing behind your door. Names are doorways. Keep yours closed. Creepy nonsense, right? At first, I thought maybe it was some subconscious garbage, dredged up by a mixture of insomnia and suggestion, but the whispers started referencing things I hadn't thought about. Once it said, "The red sweater doesn't belong to you," on a night when I was wearing a thrifted hoodie I hadn't worn in months. I stared at the closet for hours after that. Another night, "Your mother lied about the sound in the walls." That one hit like a punch. I remembered, when I was 7, waking up night after night to a scratching sound in the walls of our old house. My mum told me it was squirrels, but now I wasn't so sure. Eventually, I told someone. Jacob. He was my best friend, my lab partner through undergrad, the kind of person who always listened with his whole body. I didn't want to tell him at first. I knew how it would sound, but I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. He didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. Instead, he said, "You hear it too?" That was the first time I realized this might be bigger than me. We compared notes. Jacob's experience was eerily similar to 13 a.m., 13 seconds of pure silence, and a whisper that didn't record. But his whisper was different. He'd been hearing it for almost a year, but it only came once a week. He wrote his down too. "Don't blink when the clock stops. She's wearing your mother's voice. Something climbed into your shadow last night." Hearing him read them out loud gave me chills. It felt like listening to a death sentence being read in poetry. We theorized. Maybe we were tuned into something others weren't, some weird frequency or a consciousness anomaly. Jacob wanted to run experiments. He talked about brainwave monitoring, REM deprivation, synchronized timing. But there was always a limit to what we could actually test, because whatever this was didn't play by physics. So we did what we could. We started logging the events together, nightly check-ins, phone calls at 2, 5, then silence during the event, followed by whisper notes. Some nights, nothing changed. Other nights, the whispers grew stranger. Jacob called me one morning, voice shaking. "She asked me something last night." "What do you mean, she?" "The whisper. It was a question this time." "What did it ask?" He hesitated. "Do you still think it's a whisper?" That was the beginning of the shift. We realized something. The whisper, whatever it was evolving, testing boundaries, changing its approach, and it knew we were paying attention. 2 nights later, it spoke to me again. But this time, I made a mistake. I reacted. The whisper said, "I can hear you breathing." I didn't mean to respond. I wasn't trying to engage. But I thought something, involuntarily. "What are you?" And it answered, "I am what listens between seconds." My heart almost stopped. It was the first time the voice responded directly. Not a cryptic warning, not a vague prophecy, but a reply. The silence ended a moment later, and I sat in the dark for hours, staring at the wall. The next morning, I noticed changes. My reflection was wrong. Not dramatically, but just enough that it made my skin crawl. My eyes blinked slower than they should have. My mouth didn't match the words I spoke. When I picked up the phone to call Jacob, the line clicked twice before he answered like someone else had already picked up. Then, during a daylight hour, I heard it again. Not at all. 13 a.m., not during silence. I was brushing my teeth at 9:47 p.m. when the whisper came, clear and cold, sliding up my spine from nowhere. Soon, I dropped my toothbrush. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't sleep the night after that, either. Jacob came over the following day. He brought equipment, cameras, microphones, even motion sensors. We decided to do a full test, total surveillance. If the whisper wouldn't let itself be recorded, maybe we'd catch something else. A flicker, a presence, anything. We set up everything in my apartment. Multiple angles, audio monitors, lights left on in every room. We weren't expecting answers, but we weren't prepared for what we found. We weren't expecting answers, but we weren't prepared for what we found. We had everything ready by 11:30 p.m. Jacob took the couch, I took the recliner. All lights on, recording devices armed. I remember we both joked about it being like a ghost hunting show, only without a crew or audience. That was the last time we laughed. Midnight passed, then 1:00. We sat mostly in silence. occasionally murmuring to one another about camera angles or how strange it felt knowing we were about to stare at a clock just to watch it stop. At 2:12, we both stood up. The air felt thinner. I don't know how else to describe it. Like the oxygen in the room had been pulled down to 70%. Everything felt slightly harder breathing, moving, thinking. We positioned ourselves side by side, facing the monitor. It displayed every camera angle at once: kitchen, hallway, living room, bedroom, bathroom. The clock on the wall ticked its way to 2:13. And then it froze. We didn't speak. The motion detectors stopped logging. Every screen flickered once and went black. No audio. No video. 13 seconds. And then the whisper came. This time, louder. Not just a presence behind my ear, it was in the room. "Don't turn around." Jacob's hand clenched around the arm of the couch. My fingers were white on the remote. We didn't move. Something shifted behind us. The silence lingered. I swear to you, it didn't end after 13 seconds. We both checked our watches later. What should have been 13 seconds lasted nearly a full minute. No sound, no motion. The air felt like syrup. And then I felt something touch the back of my neck. It wasn't a hand. It was longer. Fingers, maybe. Or something mimicking fingers. Cold, slightly wet, like seaweed or sinew. Jacob whimpered. That's when the whisper returned. But this time it said something different. Not a warning, not a riddle. A question. "Why are you watching?" And that's when the screams started. Not from us. From the monitors. Every camera feed snapped back on at once, but they weren't showing my apartment. Each screen showed a version of it, but wrong, slightly off. The walls were covered in dark handprints. The windows looked out onto pitch-black nothing. Something flickered past one of the screens, a pale shape, long-limbed, head bent at an unnatural angle. The sound came back in a burst static, then a voice, garbled and broken, repeating a single phrase. "It's wearing your skin. It's wearing your skin. It's wearing your..." I yanked the power cable from the monitor. The silence shattered. Sound returned. The clock ticked again. The air normalized. Jacob collapsed onto the floor, shaking, staring at nothing. I called his name. He didn't answer. His lips were moving, but the words were mangled. Nonsense syllables. I helped him to the couch, trying to keep him from biting his tongue. Eventually, he stopped muttering and just sat there, unmoving, eyes wide and unfocused. I called 911. They took him away. I wasn't allowed to ride in the ambulance. I watched it disappear down the street, and for a few seconds, I considered packing a bag and just running. Anywhere. As far away as I could get. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Wherever I went, 2:13 would follow. And the whisper already knew my name. The next few days blurred. I didn't go to work. Didn't answer emails. My apartment felt violated. Like something had stepped through a threshold that should never have been opened. I started to notice things. My phone would vibrate once, and when I looked, there'd be no notification. Every now and then, I'd hear my own voice, my voice calling from another room, just out of earshot, just far enough that I couldn't catch what it said. Once, I found muddy footprints in my kitchen, too long, barefoot, walking in a pattern, circle, circle, line. I wiped them up, heart pounding, and checked the locks for the 20th time. Everything was secure. And then I started dreaming. I'd wake up not remembering the details, just impressions. Something dark pressing against my chest. The sensation of being watched. Once, I woke up with blood under my fingernails and no clue how it got there. I hadn't scratched myself. I hadn't cut anything. Another time, I woke up facing the mirror. I don't remember getting out of bed. I was just standing there, watching my own reflection. But the reflection wasn't watching back. Its eyes were fixed above my shoulder, as if something was behind me. And then it blinked. But I didn't. That was when I started recording myself at night. I set up my phone on the dresser, angled at my bed, voice recording running. The first night, nothing happened. The video showed me sleeping restlessly, tossing and turning. I watched the whole thing frame by frame. But on the second night, at exactly 2:13, the audio cut out. I'd expected that. What I didn't expect was the shadow. At 2:13, a shape rose up behind me in bed. It had no clear features, no edges, just a distortion in the air, like heat waves in the shape of a person. It leaned over my sleeping body. And then I smiled. Not the version of me on video. I mean me, sitting there watching. I realized I was smiling involuntarily. My lips had curled into a grin. I felt cold sweat break across my back and forced myself to stop. Then the shape leaned down and whispered into my sleeping ear. I couldn't hear it, of course the audio was dead. But the moment it finished, my sleeping body opened its eyes. Not slowly, not groggily. Like a puppet getting yanked upright. Wide, alert, unblinking. And then I sat up. I walked over to the camera, dead-eyed, face blank. I stared into the lens for 7 full seconds. Then the video cut out. The next thing I remember is waking up in bed, thinking I'd had another nightmare. Until I watched that. I deleted the file, threw the phone into a drawer. I haven't recorded myself since. I started keeping all the lights on, never letting my reflection linger in mirrors, covering the windows with thick curtains. I unplugged all the clocks. But none of it helped. The whisper still came. And it was changing again. The most recent message was the worst. It said, "We can share you." Not I. We. I started to wonder if the whisper wasn't just one thing. Maybe it was a place, or a group, something older than language, using speech the way a fisherman uses bait. I thought about Jacob, how he'd gone from cautious to broken overnight. And I remembered something else. Miranox, 17. That old forum post, the one that said, "If it learns your voice, it learns you. Do not acknowledge, do not investigate. I spoke once, only once. Now it knows my name." I didn't listen. I wanted answers. And now it had something better than answers. It had a crack in the door. A voice. My voice. Last night, things escalated. I was making tea, pacing in the kitchen, trying to stay awake and alert. I hadn't slept in 2 days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the reflection grinning at me. 2:0 am. I sat on the couch, bracing myself. 2:10. I checked the clock. 2:12. The second hand moved. And then, nothing. It didn't stop. 2:13 came. No silence. The world kept moving. My breath sounded normal. The hum of the fridge was still there. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Maybe it was over. Maybe it had passed me by. Then the lights went out. Not all at once sequentially. Living room, kitchen, bathroom, bedroom. As if something was walking through my apartment. The silence didn't come all at once either. It rolled in, like fog. My ears popped. My vision dimmed at the edges. I turned slowly and saw me, standing in the hallway. But it wasn't me. It was the version I'd seen on the video, still, blank, pale. It raised its hand and waved. Then it whispered, audibly, from across the room, "You invited me." I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My throat locked, my limbs froze. Then the copy walked toward me. Step by step. Deliberate. It didn't blink. It didn't breathe. And just before it reached me, before its fingers brushed against my own, time snapped back. The lights flicked on. Sound returned. The hallway was empty. I vomited. I cried. And now I'm writing this, unsure of how long I still have. Because the whisper doesn't wait for 2:13 anymore. It comes when it wants. Sometimes in mirrors. Sometimes in doorways. Sometimes just behind my eyes when I blink. And now it's trying new things. Last night, I heard a voice in my own voice say, "It's your turn. It's your turn." I don't know what it meant exactly, but I haven't been able to shake it. Something about the tone of the whisper still in my voice, but not quite mine, made it sound like a countdown had begun. A process already in motion, something I could no longer stop. Since that night, I've noticed it doesn't always wait for darkness anymore. Twice now, I've felt the shift during the day. The light doesn't change. The noise around me doesn't drop away like it does at 2:13. But I feel that same pressure on the back of my neck, the same pricking behind my eyes. Like something is stepping into frame before the camera starts rolling. It happened yesterday at the library. I was desperate, searching for anything, any record of what this could be. Not online. Online, I'd reached a dead end. All the accounts like mine disappeared after a post or two, like the people who wrote them had been wiped clean off the map. So I went analog. I spent hours in the local history section, poring through microfiche and dusty local legends. At some point, I found a folder labeled Unexplained Incidents, 1960s, 1980s. Inside were police reports, articles, even handwritten letters. Some were obvious hoaxes, UFO sightings, cryptid sketches, but one caught my eye. It was dated 1978, a single page, typewritten, with the top corner labeled, "Internal Memo, off the record, 6/18/78, Lieutenant Marsh." Here's what it said. "This is the third unexplained disappearance from the Dorsey apartments in as many weeks. The common thread seems to be this so-called quiet minute around 2 in the morning. The last surviving witness, elderly tenant, Mrs. Hemsley, claimed that everything went hush-hush, like the world held its breath, and then they just weren't there no more. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, just vanished. I've closed the file for now, but something's off. Locking this away with the others in Archive B until someone braver than me comes along." The Dorsey apartments were demolished in 1991. I looked it up. The site is now a parking lot outside the metro station. But that detail, the quiet minute, lined up too perfectly. It wasn't exactly 13 seconds, but that could be perception. People exaggerate, but the core of it, the silent moment, followed by disappearance, it felt connected. I copied the memo, slipped it into my jacket pocket, and left the library. I remember walking into the parking lot, turning my face up to the sky. It was bright, windless, not a single cloud. And then the pressure returned. A cold spot in the middle of the summer air. My heartbeat stuttered. My limbs felt wrong, like I wasn't controlling them fully. And behind me, in broad daylight, I heard it. A whisper. "Your reflection is almost ready." I didn't turn around. I did not turn around. That seems to be the rule. Every time something comes close, the whisper warns me not to look, not to engage. And I've listened. God help me, I've listened. But I feel the weight of it growing. I feel something trying to push up through me, like a second self building from the inside out. Sometimes when I speak, the voice that comes out isn't quite mine. Just an edge too sharp, a syllable too slow, and people notice. The woman at the coffee shop flinched yesterday when I said, "Thank you," like I'd barked it. At night, the whisper speaks almost constantly now. Sometimes I wake up already sitting up, or standing in the corner. Once, I was crouched in front of the mirror, smiling. I'd left fingernail scratches in the frame. Last night, it escalated again. I woke at 2:13, but the silence didn't come in one piece. It broke into moments, like static skipping across a vinyl record. The ticking of my clock glitched, tick, 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 and then froze. The lights flickered. And then there was a voice. Not the whisper, a full voice, clear, female, coming from the bedroom doorway. It said, "You're not doing this right." I turned slowly. The figure in the doorway was tall and emaciated, with limbs too long and skin like paper soaked in ash. It had no eyes, just hollow impressions where eyes should have been, as if someone had forgotten to finish drawing its face. and it was wearing my hoodie. The red thrift store one. The one the whisper told me didn't belong to me. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. And then the voice changed. Same figure, but this time it spoke in my voice. And it said, "You invited me." The room stretched. That's the only word I have for it. The walls pulled back like elastic. The corners bent in ways they shouldn't. Space twisted. I felt myself sinking, but not downward, inward, folding. The figure reached for me, fingers like antennae. And then the whisper came closer, angrier, protective somehow. Not yet. The figure screamed no sound, just a wave of pressure and dissolved into smoke. I collapsed. When I came to, my nose was bleeding, and every mirror in the apartment was cracked. I haven't cleaned them. They all show something different now. Not the room behind me, not my face, just variations. Slightly different versions of reality. Ones where the lights flicker too fast. Ones where I'm not in the reflection at all. One shows me, standing still, eyes completely black, smiling. He doesn't blink. He just waits. I've taken to leaving sticky notes on the mirrors that say things like, "That's not you," and "Don't blink first," just to remind myself what's real. But some mornings, the sticky notes are gone, or rewritten. One said, "Let me finish." Another simply said, "Soon." I tried burning one of them. A mirror, I mean. I carried the cracked bathroom mirror into the alley, smashed it into chunks, and set fire to the pieces in a metal trash can. Watched them melt into silvered sludge. I went inside. Found the mirror whole again on the wall. Same crack, same frame. Only now, the reflection showed a version of the apartment that had no doors. That night, I started dreaming again. This time, it was clear. I was walking through a field of mirrors, set like gravestones in tall grass. Each one showed a different version of me, some sickly, some bloody, some smiling too wide. One was on fire, one had no mouth. One was whispering something I couldn't hear. I turned to leave, but the grass wrapped around my ankles. The mirrors bent forward, tilting toward me like vultures. And then, from all of them at once, came the phrase, "You're almost hollow enough." I woke up screaming. My throat hurt. I didn't scream with my voice. Someone else did, through me. I tried calling Jacob's hospital. I needed to hear a human voice, something normal, something grounding. But when I gave them his name, the receptionist paused. "Sir, are you family?" "No, just a friend." "I'm sorry," she said. "That patient was transferred." "Transferred? When?" I don't have that information. There's no record in this system." "What do you mean there's no record?" A pause. "Sir, what was the patient's name again?" "Jacob Winchell." Silence. "Sir, I'm sorry, but we don't have anyone by that name listed. Are you sure you're calling the right facility?" I hung up. Looked at my call log. It didn't show the call at all. Like I never made it. I tried texting Jacob's number. The message bounced. Invalid contact. I dug through my phone's photos, no pictures of him. I opened my notebook's pages missing, torn out at odd angles, not clean tears, as if something had bitten through them. There was no record of Jacob anywhere. I opened my fridge to get water. Found his lab coat hanging inside, wet and cold and covered in red fingerprints. No idea how it got there. So now I'm alone, but not really, because the whispers have multiplied. It's not one voice anymore, it's dozens, a chorus all slightly out of sync, some ahead of the beat, some behind, all whispering different things, layering over each other. Like, "Let the silence in. Don't wake up yet. You were always meant to be hollow." And sometimes, my own voice. I'm not scared anymore, but I am. I'm terrified, because I'm not sure which version of me is saying that. And I'm not sure it's lying. It's 11:50, 4 p.m. I don't know if I'll make it to morning. I can feel them gathering, not just the whispers but the things behind them, the shapes, the moments that shouldn't exist. There's a weight pressing down on the building, like something impossibly vast is standing on the roof and leaning in. Tonight, the silence won't wait. I think it's already started. My phone's ticking clock is desynchronized. It jumps forward, then back. The lights flicker in perfect rhythm with my heartbeat, as though something is mimicking me in reverse. I'm writing this all down because I think this is my last clear moment, and because you need to understand how this ends. How it always ends. But to get there, I have to go back. 3 nights ago, I found something I wasn't supposed to find. I'd stopped sleeping, stopped eating much too. I barely left the apartment except to scavenge through pawn shops and junkyards, looking for analog equipment, anything without a microchip. I needed something pure, something deaf to whatever had crawled into the digital air. One of those nights, I came across a flea market stall with no vendor, just a sign that read, "Silent gifts, pay with memory." In the center was a box of cassette tapes. Most were blank, but one had a label that chilled me to my bones. 2:13, real time. I didn't ask questions. I didn't leave money. I took the tape. When I got home, I plugged in my old cassette deck. No power cord, it ran on batteries. No Bluetooth, no Wi-Fi, just mechanical spools and humming magnets. I inserted the tape, hit play. The hiss started immediately. Warm, analog, comforting. And then, silence. Not recorded silence. True silence. The kind that feels like something alive is holding its breath. I leaned closer. And then, behind the silence, behind the non-existent static, I heard it. Not a whisper, a conversation. Two voices, but mine. One calm, one terrified. You can't keep doing this. I don't have a choice. It's in me now. Then give it what it wants. I stopped the tape. My hands were shaking. That wasn't a recording. That was a looper message caught between 2 versions of me, repeating somewhere outside time. And then I understood something I hadn't dared believe. This had happened before. Maybe not to me exactly, but to others like me. Other selves, other versions, caught in the 13-second snare and stretched thin over possibilities. I wasn't being haunted. I was being mirrored. Or worse, prepared. That night, I didn't wait for 2:13. I walked into the bathroom, stood in front of the mirror, and asked, "What do you want?" The mirror didn't answer. But my reflection didn't move. Not at first. Then, after about 5 seconds, it grinned and stepped forward. My actual body didn't move, but in the glass, he took a step toward the other side, eyes wide, smile too sharp, and when his hands hit the glass, my hands stung. I staggered back. The mirror shook. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Only silence. And then the real whisper came, slicing through the world like a razor through a curtain. "You're hollow enough now." The mirror shattered. 1,000 shards. Each one showed something different. I saw flashes. A version of myself tied to a chair, whispering numbers. Another one digging a hole in red earth under a starless sky. Another one walking down an endless hallway made of ticking clocks, each frozen at 2:13. And just one, was smiling, because it had made it out. I don't know how, but I have to believe it's possible. Which brings me to tonight. The walls are bleeding light. Not metaphorically, literally. Thin lines of pale blue ooze pulse along the corners of my apartment, dripping like oil from unseen cracks in the architecture. The whispers don't even bother hiding anymore. They speak plainly. You were chosen. We only needed 13 seconds of your time. Everything else was a gift. And worst of all, the name you were given isn't yours anymore. They want to take it. And not just my namey place, my voice, my reflection. They want to wear me like a coat, walk into the world, and speak as if they belong. And no one will know the difference. Because the moment they take my name, I'll be gone. I've seen what happens to the others. I've seen where they go. Into the mirrors, into the clock face between seconds, into the moment when the whisper answers back. But I'm not going to let that happen. I have one last trick. I built it last night. An isolation chamber. Heavy rubber matting. Layered lead lining. No electronics. No reflective surfaces. A soundless tomb. I set it up in my storage unit. And tonight, at exactly 2:13, I'll be inside. Completely cut off from everything. I don't know if it'll work. But maybe, just maybe, if I don't hear the whisper, if I can deny it a pathway, it won't be able to finish what it started. I have to try. This is my last entry. If you find this journal, this file, this document, then I didn't come back. Or maybe something wearing my name did. If you see someone who looks like Mesame voice, same eyes but you feel off around them, if the clocks freeze when they pass by, if mirrors crack after they smile, don't speak to them. Don't acknowledge them. Because that's how it spreads. The whisper doesn't kill. It replaces. 1 second at a time. One silence at a time. 13 seconds is all it needs. I'm heading to the chamber now. Wish me luck. I'm writing this from a different apartment. I don't remember how I got here. There was the box, the chamber, the silence. Then, nothing. When I woke, it was morning, birds chirping, normal. But something is wrong. The neighbors don't look at me. When I smile at the barista, she flinches. My phone only displays one contact now, me. When I call it, I hear breathing on the other end. At night, the silence doesn't come. Redditen. Not anymore. Now it comes when I speak. Every time I say my name, there's a 13-second pause inside my head before the next thought comes. And during that pause, I hear myself whisper, "You were supposed to stay gone.